Hey, welcome to episode number 69. Yes, chuckle away of the Canadian Prepper Podcast. We're recording on May the 24th, 2020. My name is Eric. I'm the host of the show based in Southern Ontario. I'm a hunter, target shooter, ham radio operator, and computer geek. As a first responder, I've witnessed an over-reliance on emergency services during major events. I started a small preparedness company to help people get prepared for at least 72 hours or longer.
My name is Ian, and I live on Vancouver Island. I'm an outdoor enthusiast, sport shooter, and my farm's designated handyman.
I'm Alan. I'm a safety trainer, first responder, security expert, and overall safety nerd.
My name is Tyler. I live in Northwest Wisconsin. Besides prepping, I also enjoy homesteading, metalworking, engines, guns, and the great outdoors.
And if you want to help support the show and keep the Canadian Prepper Podcast on the air, buy a t-shirt at www.rapidsurvival.com. All proceeds help keep the lights on and the backup generator fueled, and they're darn snazzy.
They are indeed. If you're enjoying the show, please take a few minutes and like us on Facebook and submit a review on iTunes. Also, we want your feedback, good or bad, or even if it's just a topic you want us to cover. You can email us at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca.
All right, so we've got some broadcasted content for you in this episode. We're going to start off first with some preparedness-related, if I could talk tonight, news articles. Next, we will let you know what we've done for our preparedness since our last episode. Then we're going to get into the main topic. We're going to be diving a little bit deeper into amateur or ham radio. So let's move into some news.
I only put one article in here tonight, one that I find a little bit disturbing. So the feds put out a fantastically wonderful loan program after they tanked the economy, drove small businesses into destruction, which Trudeau had previously claimed were nothing but tax evasion for the super rich. He's now graciously willing to lend large amounts of cash to large businesses in exchange for equity in their companies. Maybe it's just my tinfoil hat, but it smacks of the basic dictatorship that he was so fond of in China. To me, it seems a whole lot easier for liberals to control a few big companies that control most of the workers rather than a lot of small companies that control fewer workers.
I don't think nationalization is anything new with communism, that's for sure. I mean, you can call it socialism or democratic socialism, but it's basically just boils down to the same thing, right?
It's bad data. Don't give up your company to the government, please. If you're listening,
well,
don't.
Bad idea.
I ddid find it humorous, the fact that, basically if you bought from Walmart, you were safe from the COVID, but if you bought from a small business, it was like a huge danger. So I thought it was oddly, incongruous there, but.
Well, this was it. Trudeau said right when he first elected that small business was a tax haven for the rich, and that's where people went to not pay taxes, and so it was a bad thing to have small businesses operating in Canada. And now he's come up with a way to put small businesses out of business so that we're forced to deal with the Walmarts and Canadian Tires and Sobeys of the world. And if we do, that's cool. The government and the language that Moreau used was really interesting, that the public should share in the fortune of the companies as they recover from this pandemic. That was really interesting.
You want those workers to control the means of production or something like that. I think there's a line in there somewhere about some famous book. Anyway.
The only book I care about right now is 1984.
It's not meant to be an instruction manual. It's meant to be a warning. All right, so for myself, I skipped the news tonight just because basically, like Alan mentioned, huge shout out to Hughes. He had to do not just fight a big fire in the local neighborhood as part of his first responder duties, but his family was awarded with a 5 minutes notice bug out. So we're hoping that if he comes on next week or when he can going to give us a big debrief as what went well and what didn't, because that's very timely since we're just talking about bug outs to not even last episode or 2 episodes ago.
Yeah, it was 2 episodes ago. Yeah.
So it's pretty big deal. So good for him. I hope he's doing well.
Yeah, hopefully everything's working out in his favor and they can get the emergency situation under control. We can hear about it next week.
Some really cool pictures he sent us from the area, and I certainly hope that it works out well for him. And I really hope that his plan worked as well as he thought it was going to, and looking forward to hearing more about it.
So a lot of storage tubs to heave into that trailer. 5 minutes. Whoa. Anyway, carry on.
So I've got a news article here. I figured it made sense to use this one in regards to the episode we've got going on tonight. But it's titled Using Technology to Connect with Each Other is Old Hat for Ham Radio Operators. So it just talks about how ham operators are, using the radio frequencies to stay connected, keep informing each other what's going on, but doing it with that whole social distance thing that everybody is doing with COVID right now. So it was quite a timely article, Canadian based, and I thought it was just a good one to kind of start the episode out with.
Yeah, for me this week, so the coronavirus pandemic has certainly caused some turbulence between some of the major global powers. Global trade and relations continue to degrade between some nations, namely China and the U.S., with quite a few reports the past few weeks stating that both sides are kind of preparing for possible armed conflict. So I came across 3 news articles just in the past week alone relating to recent nuclear talk and activity. Probably doesn't help that I just started watching Jericho on Netflix, which is a great show, by the way. But the current global tension certainly has got me a little on edge. So the first article I got is from the Washington Post. On May 21st, the Trump administration announced its plans to withdraw from the Open Skies Treaty. The treaty was signed in 1992 following the collapse of the Soviet Union. This treaty includes Russia, the U.S., and a majority of the NATO allies. And this treaty allows its 34 members to engage in unarmed monitoring flights over the territory of other membering countries, using approved sensors to collect information on military deployments. And the treaty's preamble explains that these flights are basically designed to improve openness and transparency, facilitate the monitoring of compliance with existing or future arms control agreements, and to strengthen the capacity for conflict prevention and crisis management. So a little unsettling that the U.S. wants to pull out of that, especially given what's going on the world stage. The second one I had was another article from the Washington Post. The Trump administration has also discussed whether to conduct its first U.S. nuclear test since 1992. The matter reportedly came up at a May 15th meeting of senior officials representing the top national security agencies. Senior administration officials said that the demonstrating to Moscow and Beijing that the United States could, quote unquote, rapid test would prove useful from a negotiating standpoint, as Washington seeks a trilateral deal to regulate the arsenals of the larger nuclear powers. The meeting did not conclude any certain specific date that they're going to start conducting testing. But one of the senior administration officials said that the proposal is very much an ongoing conversation. And the final article I had in there was from Time magazine. So in the first public appearance in 20 days, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un convened a key military meeting to discuss bolstering the country's nuclear arsenal and putting its armed forces on high alert. North Korea's official news agency said Sunday that Kim led a meeting of the Central Military Commission of the ruling Workers' Party. Set forth at the meeting were new policies for further increasing the nuclear war deterrence of the country and putting strategic armed forces on high alert operation. So I think it's probably a combination of me watching Jericho on Netflix and some nuclear talk in the news, hopefully anyways. But I don't know, it's got me a little worried, I guess. I thought
that's a lot of nuclear talk.
Well,
it is a lot of nuclear talk, and it's been all kind of just in the last week. So,
there's been a lot of shenanigans going on lately too. For example, the local high school has a lot of foreign exchange students, and a lot of them were told to get home and not to expect to come back to Canada for a few years. I'm like, yeah, that seems awfully odd wording. But anyway, the other interesting thing too is that with Venezuela having the 3rd largest reserves of oil in the world, for some reason Iran feels obligated to send oil tankers to Venezuela right now, and the U.S. feels obligated to go intercept them. So there's obviously some more stuff behind the scenes going on, and a lot of saber rattling. It seems everything going on right now.
Yeah, yep, and certainly with the pandemic going on, everybody's on high alert already, and everyone's kind of mad at each other for various reasons. So,
well, China's mad at everybody, and Russia's kind of always mad, and North Korea wants to be mad, but nobody's really taking them seriously. Venezuela's kind of doing the same thing. I think there are a lot of boxes being checked right now that lead towards the fact that I'm thankful I'm too old to be drafted.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just way too old for that. But I think it's definitely time for a Team America, too.
Yes. Yeah, that's a requirement.
Agreed.
All right. So did we lose Ian?
Looks like he timed out.
Looks like we did, yeah. But that will move into what we've done lately for prep.
For him anyways.
Yep, that is a good photo. We're going to have to put that one to use, I think. All right, let's move on to what we've done lately for preps. So for myself, born borrowed a log splitter and got a bunch of trees fall the last year and two, and then had them all cut up and ready to go. But I hadn't split them, just let them sit and dry. So got them all cut up, and the wood shed is full yet again. So that's good.
Nice.
Some more yard cleanup. So the area that did have all the logs sitting in it, and the last little bit of brush cleanup and raking and all that fun stuff. So the yard is spotless now, and I got the garden planted. So all the little seedlings that we had started inside, we got them out and transplanted them into the garden. And anything that we weren't going to, hey, Ian's back. Anything that we weren't going to transplant, we got into the ground. So the garden's set and ready to go. So
Fantastic.
You can't have me miss my favorite part. Come on.
I know. We tried.
Shockingly short for you this weekend.
Yeah, I've actually been slacking off quite a bit lately. I gotta admit, it's been delightful. But yeah, so I guess for myself, shearing day happened. It's just the big once a year deal with the alpacas. So I had a couple friends show up, and the professional shearing lady as well, and managed to. It went off without a hitch. Nobody got injured. No animals got injured. Yeah, everything worked out well. I mean, as good as can be. So it's always it's a fun day because we get to kind of hang around, play professional farmer for the day, have a little barbecue afterwards. It was a pretty fun day. So that's a full day taken care of out of the week. Let's see here. I did a range date with the wife. So we wanted to hug our guns because you never know how much longer it'll be before we can't take them to the range anymore. Oh. So yeah, because I mean they're banning more by the day it seems. Did my usual brass scrounge, cleaned all that stuff up, and finally feel a little better about my 9mm supply. Let's see here. Wood supply. Started stacking it up in the woodsheds because I usually do that in September. And hey, let's get it done now while I have the COVID time off, right? Let's see here. Did some more CGN deals, kind of bought and sold a few more things. I had a bunch of shovels that were sitting there rusting out in the rain the last fall, like basically exposed to too much moist air. So I scraped them all down, painted them up, made a little hanging organizational system, and then rehung them in a little drier place. And yeah, I had some massive egg sales. Cleaned out our egg fridge twice this week, which was pretty amazing. And I had one lady take 7 dozen. Which was huge. And wow. Let's see here. I had 3 more chicken babies born today. That was good. And one, I don't know if it's going to make it or not, but we'll see. But I don't think we'll ever have a problem selling baby chickens this year, which is good. And yeah, that has been studying for my ham license, which I swear to God I'm going to get this year. But that's it.
This time I mean it.
Yeah, this time I really, really, really mean it.
You'll get there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's me. More of the same. Actually had a nice big fire last night. Got the rest of those trees taken care of that we dropped in April. Finally got those down, and then we decided that we're going to knock down our garage, double the size, and so I started doing a little bit of work for that. That's probably going to be this year project. Hopefully have it dried in before winter. And like Ian, did a little bit of ham study because I've been saying this for 10 years now. And so time to go or get off the pot, right?
Yep, absolutely. And for me, since the last time I podcasted, I finally finished basically clearing all my property lines. Finished cutting a lot of trees, taking some stumps out. So I went through and serviced my chainsaw. I went ahead and purchased a new bar. My old one was getting pretty wore out. I've had it for 3 years now, and I've cut 3 winters of wood on it, and all of that on the same 3 chains. And those are also wore down to nothing, so I went ahead and bought 4 brand new chains, as well as some chain guides, and got that all serviced up. Cleared out a spot in the woods for my pig pen. I set up the pig pen fencing, the feeder, water, shelter, all that stuff, and I'll be picking up my pigs here in just a few days. It got delayed, unfortunately, but... been in communication with him, and I'll be picking him up this week. I added 2 12-foot steel tube gates across my driveway. So I was actually able to recycle all the materials for this project from my folks' place as they get ready to move. And we had a little hobby farm there growing up. So I got 2 12-foot gates and sanded those down, repainted them, straightened them out a little bit. And I got some 6x6 posts. And so for just the cost of concrete, I was able to kind of increase the security on the property. Recycled 2 large old rusted out livestock hay feeders. The first one I cut up into kind of a bunk or a slop feeder for the pigs. And then the top portion I cut up into some climbing structures for peas in the garden. And then the second feeder I cut into 2 smaller hay feeders for goats. We're planning to get some goats here next year. So Fixed an electrical issue in the shop. I actually found that the previous owner had just a wire buried out to a tree about 40 feet off of the shop, and it had wore through and was getting ground out by the rain. So I lost power to the shop for a few days, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And finally found a wire poking out of the ground outside, and so I got that tied up and fixed that. Saved myself a little from the electrician.
That's random.
Yeah. I think he used to be a carpenter and did all of his work out there. So
that's incredibly odd how when you take over a house, sometimes you find some really random Bubba wiring fixes.
Yeah, tell me about it. Hopefully that's the last one I find, because I've already found a few others. Went turkey hunting for the first time. That was fun. Didn't get to shoot at anything, but heard a lot of activity early in the morning when we first got out there, and it was the first time ever turkey hunting, so that was a lot of fun. I went with my soon-to-be brother-in-law. Got myself a new pair of Red Wing boots, and got those all waterproofed and ready to go. Working on breaking them in now. I put together called a blackout bucket. It's kind of a Faraday cage as well, so I'll use this in case of an EMP or something like that. But also, if we get a long-term power outage, I've got everything I would need in there. So I've got, I got a 12-volt deep cycle battery, some portable USB battery banks, AA, AAA 9-volt batteries, multiple charging cords and accessories. Got a BioLite camp stove, as well as a BioLite solar charging station and light kit. Got 2 LED headlamps, 2 LED flashlights. I've got a Baofeng, like the 5-watt handheld radio in there, and I've also got a pair of Midland walkie-talkies. And everything except for the 12-volt battery I actually purchased over the last 3 years with credit card rewards points. So when I first moved into my house here, I set up all of my electrical, my garbage, my phone and internet, all of that. I set up to auto pay with a credit card, and then I just pay that balance at the end of the month, so I don't lose any on interest. But I also get to collect the rewards points. So I've over the last 3 years alone cashed in on quite a few $100s of rewards points there. So if you're prepping on a budget, that's a good way to do it.
Nice.
Absolutely. With the U.S. doing all their nuclear testing, it might be a good idea to step up your trips there.
Exactly. Yep, that was my thinking. And then just today, I got 9 large wooden pallets for free. They're 5 feet by 16 feet, and they're actually they're from a roofing company. And they get all of their tin roofing and siding on these pallets, and they're just giving them away. So I'm going to be able to use I'll use one for a portable animal shelter for pigs. I'm going to set up a few inside the barn for shelving and storing some things on, and then the other ones I can just strip down for framing and nesting boxes inside the chicken coop and any other projects I got going on. So that's been the last couple of weeks for me.
Sounds like Tyler wins the prize this week.
I was just going to say, you beat me to it.
Well, I've had 2 weeks off, so that's my excuse.
Fair enough. All right. Well, with that, how about we move into the main topic of the show? So I'll start off with some common questions that I hear quite often in regards to ham radio. And I'll use the term interchangeably, ham radio and amateur radio. It is technically amateur radio, but you'll hear it referred to as ham radio all the time. Ham radio, basically just because everybody that's on it likes to ham it up. They like to chat a lot, so that's why it gets the nickname of ham radio. But technically the proper name for it is amateur radio. Really, the number one question I get quite often is, why get licensed when shit hits the fan? I'll have my radio and I'll broadcast and everything will be fine because there won't be any rules. Nothing applies at that point. Who cares about licensing? Yeah, sure. But the problem there is, like we've been preaching over and over and over, is know how to use your gear, know how to use it ahead of time. Because you're gonna have first transmission jitters, licensed or not. Probably more jitters if you're not licensed. But you're going to want to know how to use your equipment. You're going to want to know how to use your gear. Well, so go out and grab a license.
I think everybody's seen that movie where somebody goes, hello, is anybody on here? And they don't know what the hell they're doing. So yeah, it's a good idea to not only just know the procedures, but be comfortable doing it. So it's just not a big deal. It's just another thing. It's like making a phone call, right?
Exactly. Like I remember my first time, and even working in emergency services, using a radio all the time. I'm comfortable transmitting on a radio. I'm comfortable using it. But my first time on the ham radio, I got the jitters again. I was nervous because you need to learn it's like almost kind of like a new language of how people communicate, how you initiate a contact, and how to talk. And it's nerve-wracking. So no better time to practice that and get used to how to do it than when it's not the end of the world if you mess up, or you're not trying to get a really important message out there. You're just trying to say hello. And if it takes you 5 or 10 seconds to get the word hello out, whoopee-doo. And then you slowly get more comfortable with it, and you get comfortable with operating. So that's usually my reply to why get licensed. Because why not?
I think you're absolutely right too. So you think about like whether it be nautical or aeronautical or CB radio, they've all got their little catchphrases and procedures. They're slightly different from each other. And so, it's not a bad idea just to get kind of more comfy with it.
And then you get a feel for what's in your area as well. So you kind of know where you like to operate, who's who on the airwaves, and who you're talking to, and kind of how to access things. So that's kind of why get a license, because why not? You can get practice that way, you get comfortable with it, and you get to know your equipment, and you get to know your operating environment.
Why not? So that my name isn't on yet another government list.
Yeah, fair enough. The government list says you have a radio. Yeah, I guess they could use that.
I'm on multiple lists already.
Yeah.
One more at this point.
You're on this podcast. You're on a bunch of lists.
If you're on this podcast, if you're on Patriot, I mean, you guys, 2 lists right there. I'm on. I'm a PAL holder. That's another one.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's yeah.
You know what? You know I'm here. You may as well really know I'm here.
That's right.
The other thing that I hear quite often is I'm only going to listen. So I don't need a license. I'm just going to listen. Yeah, sure. You could listen to the ham radio frequencies. The trick there, and a lot of people don't realize this, and I didn't for the longest time either, is the Radio Communications Act actually prohibits the possession of a transceiver by anyone, but then exempts license holders. So if you have your ham radio license, you're exempt from having that transceiver for certain frequencies. So if you actually are in possession of a ham radio that can transmit, it's actually an offense against the Radio Communications Act. So if you are going to do the I'm only going to listen thing, then get something that can't transmit.
Well, it's the same thing as firearms. Like, that's the way Canadian law basically works. It's like they make everything absolutely illegal, but you get a get out of jail free card by being licensed. And it's kind of sad, but that's just the way it is.
It's just the way, yep.
You can rent an exemption from that rule.
Yeah, you can buy your freedoms back for a price.
Yeah. And we'll get into the price of getting a ham license a little ways down in the show notes here. You'll probably be surprised, I think. So speaking of license, so that we've gotten over the whole I'm just going to broadcast and shit, it's the fan thing, and I'm only going to listen. Let's get into what's actually involved in getting your ham license. Keeping in mind, this is all based on Canada. US will have some different standards for getting their licenses, and other international countries obviously will have their different ways of getting licenses as well. The testing, I believe, is fairly similar. Some differences here and there, of course, for regulatory purposes, but I'm going to be speaking directly to what's required for ham radio licensing in Canada. And it's across the country. There's no differences, whatever province you're in. It's the exact same setup across the nation. So first, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. In-person classes, you can take some classes. Usually the best spot to make contact there is your local ham radio club. So contact them, quick Google search for your area, and ham radio club will come up with a club in your area. Flip them an email. Most of them will post a phone number as well. Give them a call if you want, and just say, I'm interested. A lot will also on their webpage post when they're holding their classes. Obviously right now, those are kind of put off. They're not going to be any in-person classes, but once this whole COVID thing finally, hopefully disappears and classes start up again, that's an option for you. In this environment with COVID and the whole social distancing that's happening right now, the Radio Amateurs of Canada, or RAC, has online courses available. They fill up lightning fast. So keep an eye on their website. They do post the online courses. They do the basic amateur course for no cost. You can just sign up. It's all based, I believe they do it via Zoom. So they are still scheduled during certain times of the week. They run for, I believe it's about 2 months, and they're all online, taught by instructors that would normally teach in class, but instead they've done it digitally, so you can do it from home. The only big complaint I've heard from a lot of people there is a lot of people are, if they are still working, they're doing shifts. They can't make the time either because of work or because of family commitments, and they just can't dedicate that couple hours a night once a week for a few months to do it. So maybe there's some other options about doing a not so much dedicated time course, but just an on-demand course, but they haven't done that yet. It's still all dedicated time, live instruction. Another option, if that live instruction thing doesn't work, either in class or digitally because of your schedule, self-study. That's the route I went. Working in emergency services, I couldn't dedicate that couple hours every week because my shifts were all over the place. So I went the self-study route. You can go to Coax Publications. If you Google them, they're a Canadian company. They actually publish a ham radio. So they are a basic ham radio course book and an advanced ham radio course book. Good book, lots of good information, goes well beyond what you would need for the exam, but it's good stuff to know. They also have a resources section as well on their website, so you can log in and do all kinds of tests and practicals and gain all kinds of extra information outside of the book. So self-study is certainly a way to do it. And if you can dedicate the time and you're able to learn by reading the book and just practicing on your own, it's a great option. Then
I was going to say also there's the option of going to Industry Canada's website, which is now called Innovation Science and Technology Canada or something like that. And basically, they'll actually provide you with the entire question bank of what's going to be on the exam. And
they
it's
certainly will.
600 questions or something like that, or maybe 400 questions.
550, I think.
Yeah, and then basically with the correct answers right there, and so you can actually, if you really want to study all 500 questions, you can do that and brute force your way through the exam that way.
Yeah, I read over countless night shifts just going over that PDF, and why not, right? If they're going to hand you the questions and the answers, you can commit some to memory, because if you're like me, when you go in to do a test, you draw a blank of everything you've read.
And on that note, I did actually take that document and highlight all the correct answers, which probably took me about 3 or 4 hours. So if anybody wants a copy, just email me, because it's a government document. It's not.
Yeah, and they will also. I've got it in my tips and tricks section later on down in the show notes, but they have an exam generator as well, so you can actually just go to the website, and it's in the show notes here. Hit generate practice exam, and it will generate an exam, 100 questions, exactly what you're going to get on your basic license, and you can go through and just do it. And then it'll tell you kind of where you sit, how you're scoring, where your weaknesses are, and then you can kind of focus on that. The Coax Publications as well, in their back end on their website, they've got the exact same kind of setup, and they'll pinpoint where your weaknesses are and what sections or what chapters in the book to focus on that you're not quite grasping yet, or you're not getting 100%. So you can go back and restudy. So there's lots of great tools available to you.
What's the threshold for passing, I guess? What's a passing score?
So there's two scores here in Canada. The first, I believe it's between 60 and 80% gets you your basic qualification. And then anything above 80% gets you your basic with honors. So basic is you can still transmit, you can still operate, but you don't get HF frequencies. So you'd have to retest to get the HF frequencies. If you get with honors, then that opens up the whole spectrum for you. So you can do HF, and then you can do your other frequencies as well. And there's a power limitation to the basic. And then if you go through and you do your advanced, you get a little bit more power output.
Okay. And I think there 2 different licenses. There's like an instructor's license as well. Is that a different test that you take then?
Yeah. So the first test is the basic. So you have to do that one first. That's the one where I talked about doing either just the basic or with honors.
Okay.
After you've done that, then you can go and you can write your advanced. So if you write your advanced test, I believe that's 50 question examination. At that point, if you pass that exam, then you can apply to be an instructor, or you can apply to be an examiner. At that point, they will appoint you as an examiner if you're approved, and then you can go and you can start to examine other candidates.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it's a fairly simplistic system from the sounds of it. As long as you've got the accreditation and you put your name in the hat, they'll let you start doing the examinations, which is nice. Another thing with doing the tests, like I mentioned, for myself, when I go in, I do a test, I always get the jitters and draw the blanks and sweat the bullets and go, oh geez, and if I fail, what happens, right? So you can rewrite the test as many times as you want. So that's a nice bonus. There's no cool off period. There's no, sorry, you failed. You're going to have to come back and rewrite in a month, or, hey, you know what, your first time you can rewrite now, and then your next time you have to wait a month. There's no delay. You can go and you can rewrite again. It's all just dependent on what your examiner will allow you to do. If they'll let you retest that day, or if they want to wait a couple days, it's really up to their schedule. But yeah, you can retest as many times as you want, or if you tested and you don't get with honors and you wanted honors, you can retest again. and test out to get your honors and get access to the HF frequencies. Now the cost. This part I get a little bit of a chuckle out of. So if you go to an Industry Canada or whatever their new name is now, Innovation Sciences and whatever the long title is, and you test with them, there's a $20 fee. So you're paying that $20. If you go to a local examiner, they're not allowed to charge that $20. But they are allowed to charge reasonable fees to recoup any costs they may have. So if they have to print out the exam using their own paper and ink from their printer, they're allowed to recoup that cost. I haven't really seen any examiners in this area that charge. They offer to meet you at the local library or wherever you write the test, and bring them a coffee, right? And that's good enough. So you want to go see the government, write your exam, you got to pay them. You want to go see the local ham guy, make a friend, and get some connections in the ham radio community in your area. It costs you a coffee. So
nothing works quite like the government that way, right?
Yep.
Oh, exactly. Now the big one, the uses in preparedness. So you've done all the studying, you've done the hard work, you've gotten through the 100-question multiple choice examination, and congratulations, you've got your ham radio ID. You're good to go. I'll touch on that quick too. Your ID. So once you do get your accreditation, you have to pick an ID. So you can either just say, give me whatever random call ID you want, and I'll touch on different call IDs later on down the show notes here. Or you can go through, you can look at the list and you can pick out an ID that you want. So it's up to you. They will start out with three letters that denote what province you're in. And then the following three are unique to your operating station. So they're unique to you. So you can pick out those three unique ones if you want, or just say, throw me a random one that's available. The list of available call IDs is also published. So keep that in mind. If you're going to go write your exam, you're going to want to know what call ID you want if you do pass the exam, because they will ask you as soon as you pass, okay, fill out this paperwork, and it'll say what call ID do you want, or do you just want a random one? So be ready for that.
And I read that if you, the only way that you can get a previously assigned ID is that somebody has to either will it to you, or it stays unavailable for 100 years after their death.
Oh,
I don't
interesting.
know how accurate that is, but that's what I was reading that when I was doing my study a couple of weeks back.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, I didn't know how the assignments of names went, or of IDs went. I know there's a ton of them on the list, but I wasn't quite sure how they got recycled. So interesting.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a stab at getting my grandpa's ID when I do write my test, and what I was told is that I have to produce his death certificate. I have to produce a fair bit of documentation, and then I can make a petition, and they may or may not assign it to me.
Nice. Huh, good to know. Right, so, now I've lost my spot in the show notes. Here we are. So we're getting to uses in preparedness. So, of course, communications is huge, right? Without communications, your team falls apart. Nothing happens. If a member of your family or a member of your group has to go out from your current location, being able to communicate with them is huge, whether good times or bad, right? So with that, ham radio it expands your ability to communicate globally. If it gets to that point, if you need to communicate globally, you can. But even here, like our local repeater, our 2-meter repeater covers about 160 kilometers of area. So it's a lot of area. That as long as I've got a good strong radio, or I've got a good strong signal coming from the repeaters, I can hear what's going on. It's one of the main towers in this area is pretty high up, so that's why it reaches so far. And they're interconnected as well, which is nice. So the repeater here is connected to the one down the road, which is connected to the one down the road. So they just keep repeating signal. And
that repeater relies on an external power source, right? Like it has to have a generator running to keep it operational if the power grid goes down.
Correct. Yeah. So they are powered. A lot of them do have. Some of them will have internet connections for certain functions. Some will have computer systems hooked up to them. Most of them have computers hooked up to them to maintain them from running for operational purposes. So yeah, absolutely, power is required. So they will have some sort of backup. Usually they're on towers too that operate different things. So it's not just ham radio. There'll be television, there'll be cellular antennas as well. So they will be well prepared to run for a little while without power. But yeah, certainly if the power goes down for a significant period, so do your repeaters.
Is there any regulation as to like how frequent those repeaters are within the country, or are they all privately owned and they're just randomly whoever owns them? Or
so for the most part in this area, they're run by the local ham club. So they have sponsored to have a repeater installed and set up. If you have your advanced ham operator license here in Canada, then you can set up your own repeater if you want.
Okay.
You still have to apply to the government and get permission to actually have it operate. But if you do have your advanced and for whatever reason you do want to have a repeater set up, then you can apply to have a repeater ID assigned and you can set one up. But most times you're going to see the club set them up, and they'll set them up in certain areas that work for the club to get the signals propagated throughout the club's area.
Okay. And then typically how close would you need to be to a repeater in order to connect with it or whatever? Let's say you're just using like your regular, 5-watt Baofeng handheld that probably everybody has. How far out can you transmit with that or receive, I guess?
Yeah, so it's line of sight.
Okay.
So as long as, and remember the line of sight isn't necessarily the human line of sight because there's the curvature of the earth, but it's line of sight of the antenna and of the radio that you're using. So as long as your antenna can kind of see the tower, then and there's a little bit of propagation there too, but you're going to be able to transmit. So it's all dependent on kind of the environment you're working on.
Okay.
This like right here, I can hit a repeater that's like the closest one here I can hit is about 15 kilometers away.
Okay.
So
basically,
and
the
good strong signal.
Rule of thumb is take the square root of your altitude above ground for your antenna and times it by 1.23, and you'll get the range in nautical miles of the antenna for VHF.
Okay.
There you go.
And how impactful are, like you said, line of sight? Let's say you're pretty densely covered by woods. Like I guess I've got dense woods all around me. Is that going to get up above the trees, or do I need to get an antenna to get up above those?
Basically, if you think the top of the trees is ground level for you, so you have to get that antenna above that ground level of the trees, and then you'll be on your way.
The higher the antenna, the better.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Let's see what else here. So, as well as being able to be connected with family members and team members in good times and bad, kind of a fun part with the hobby is the worldwide communication portion. So, yeah, the local communication is fun, and you get to meet some interesting people and get chatting about some fun stuff in the local area. But when you get into the worldwide communications, it opens up a whole other window, and it's just kind of neat to hear little tidbits from the other side of the world as to what's happening or what's going on. There's two ways to do that. You can do that with HF, which is basically bouncing the signal off the ionosphere, and it eventually propagates around and gets to different areas of the world. But depending on the time of year and different things going on with the environment, depends on how well you can actually send that signal out and what you're going to receive. So certain times of the day, certain frequencies are closed; they're just not going to operate. Certain times of the evening, other frequencies opens and some close. So this is where getting acquainted with your local ham radio club really helps out, because the people that are there are going to know what's going to work well in your area and what's not, and how to best tune your radio for certain frequencies and certain setups. The other option, and I've talked about it a couple of times on the show, is a DMR. So that's a digital type of radio. Got one here. I think I've shown it a few times before as well. But this is my little TYT. It's a little DMR radio. And I'm lucky that I've got the radio club here in town actually has a DMR repeater. It's set up on the Brandmeister network. So what I can do is there's all kinds of different talk groups assigned to that. It's a digital mode, and yes, it cheats a little bit. It uses the internet to propagate out around the world, so it doesn't go radio like repeater to repeater to repeater. The radio transmits to the repeater here in town, and then it takes that signal and shoots it across the world via the internet, but then it pops back out at another radio, which then transmits the signal. So you're never actually using a computer to talk into to send the signal. It's always a radio of some sort, but then it's sent across the internet and then rebroadcast out around the world. So it's a neat little system. This little TYT that I have has modified software on it. So whenever anybody keys up on it and starts to talk, it gives me their first name, last name if they've provided it in the database, and their location. So sometimes I'll get right down to the city, province, and city and province as to where they're located. Sometimes it'll only go to province. Sometimes it'll go to country, depending on what they've put in the database or what database you're running. So it's kind of neat to just sit around and have that thing going. And you can see as the day progresses, different areas of the world are either asleep or just waking up. So you get different areas starting to talk. And it's just kind of neat. It's a neat way to have that kind of communication. But again, keeping in mind that it relies heavily on the internet to get those signals around. So if you lose your internet, we say if there's a massive power outage, EMP or something like that, this system is simply not going to work. HF would be your system that's going to go, assuming you've got a device that isn't impacted by it, or you've got some power to run your radio.
So your most secure or your most reliable method is going to be your own antenna / your own repeater that you power yourself, that you can communicate with your people that way, but it would be fairly close. You wouldn't be able to get a huge transmission radius. Is that right?
Well, depending on how crazy you want to get with the hobby. I've seen some guys with massive towers in their backyards, and they can push a signal an incredibly far distance. If you've got the money and resources and you want to do that, have at it. It's really depends on how far you want to go with the hobby. So if you want to get your advanced license and put a tower up, you can transmit for lots and lots of space.
My grandpa had a 60-foot tower in his backyard. I remember that when I was a kid. I got about halfway up. I climbed it before somebody caught me and hauled me down. But
nice.
My neighbor's got one just 2 doors down, and I'm hoping one day if he ever gets out of it, I'll be like, hey, selling that antenna?
Yeah, I want to get rid of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watch Kijiji every once in a while. There's the odd person that will post an old TV antenna or ham radio antenna, and I'm watching. I haven't gotten that far yet, but I'd like to at some point. I have to find a weekend that my wife goes away.
It's up between our houses, so I'm hoping that's gonna be my easiest way to get in once I actually have my license, because it's directly on the other side of the wall from where I'm sitting right now, and it would be super convenient.
Yep, would be good. Another benefit to ham radio, and I saw this even just today. My area here in Central Ontario, we've had some tornado watches. We've had some thunderstorm watches and warnings. And I was actually just driving to Costco to grab some things, and the can warn system kicked in on the ham radio frequency. And all that is a group of volunteers, and they report severe weather in the area. So they'll report it to weather services, but they'll also hop on the local repeaters and they'll broadcast out, hey, just a heads up for any operators in the area. There's a severe thunderstorm warning in effect currently in the area within this broadcast, or that this tower has broadcast range in. So it's kind of neat to they'll just hop on and say, hey, this is happening right now. Any operators on, just FYI. And they also will provide what's called a ground truthing back to weather services to say, hey, what your radar is showing is actually happening here right now. We are seeing it. It is happening. We're letting people know that it's happening. So that's kind of a neat service. And as well, if your local repeater has it built in, the ones here do, they will patch in with the weather repeaters that are run by the Canadian government, and they will start broadcasting warnings. So we had a severe thunderstorm warning about an hour or so prior to us actually going live here. I had the radio on, just monitoring the frequencies, and it flipped over, did the emergency tone, and then said, just a heads up, anybody within broadcast range of this tower, currently there is an emergency, or there's a severe thunderstorm watch in effect, or a thunderstorm warning in effect. Just be prepared that it's coming through. And then, of course, it repeats in French. Then it cuts off and it goes back to normal operations. But it's just kind of a nice little early warning system to let you know that something's coming, or something's coming that's not normal, or that you should be watching out for. So, and that can be used for all kinds of things. It's not just weather related. If there's other major events happening, they will flip it over and put a warning out on it. So, and Another question actually that a lot of people will ask is if they can use their ham radio when they're traveling. Great question, because if you are able to travel overseas or within USA and you want to use your ham radio, you want to bring it with you, why not? With Canada, Canada and the USA do have an agreement with each other. Your license is valid if you have a Canadian license in the US, and same if you have a US license, it's valid in Canada. There are some restrictions and some identification requirements. So Canadian operators, if you're in the US, there's a certain way that you have to identify yourself when you're down there, when you're broadcasting. I haven't looked into it exactly as to what the requirement is, because I haven't traveled with my radio, but there's a certain thing you have to add to your call sign before you continue broadcasting. And vice versa for the US. Coming to Canada, you do get some things that you have to do if you are going to come here, but the licensing does transfer. So that's nice to know. If you're going to Europe, you need to obtain a CEPT permit. I had to do some digging to figure out what the heck that stood for. So apparently it is the European Conference of Postal and Telecommunications Administrators. So from what I could see there, it's a matter of if our certification does work out to be the same requirements as what they have there, then your certification is valid. If there is no CEPT for the country within Europe that you're visiting, then you need to contact their local administration office first and seek permission. And then you're able to bring your radio and transmit at that point. And I'll move into some tips and resources. Like I said, every province does have its own 3-digit designation first. So that comes in handy if you're listening and all of a sudden a different call sign comes on the air, which can happen. You can get different radio or different repeaters can be interlinked with others via the internet. So you can, the repeater in this area, you can dial up a number, look at a database, and link it to a repeater in, say, BC, and you can start transmitting in BC. So myself and Ian could be talking to each other via radio. Again, it cheats a little bit and uses the internet to make that connection between repeaters, but in good times, why not? So the odd time you'll have somebody from another province hop on to one of your local repeaters. So knowing what they are is pretty handy. So you've got like VE1 and VA1 for Nova Scotia, VE2 and VA2 for Quebec, VE3 and VA3 for Ontario, VE4, VA4 for Manitoba, and it keeps going like that, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, etc. So it's just kind of good to know what those are if you do have somebody chatting with you.
Are there similar designations for each state within the states? I don't know myself.
Yeah, you know what? I haven't been able to figure out exactly how the U.S. call signs work. Some guys I talk to, I hear long call signs from. Some I hear short. I think that there's got to be some kind of rhyme and reason as to what the different call signs mean. Mm-hmm. It might fall within their class or designation of certification, but I haven't really looked it up yet, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I got that repeater right across from the bay from my house here. So yeah, one of these days when I do get that license, we'll have to give that a try, Eric, for sure.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Now, you've got VE0 for international waters listed in the show notes here. I mean, if it's international waters, is it Canadian broadcasting? How does that work?
So if that's a Canadian ship, that the ham radio station is permanently installed in that ship and it's going to be traveling in international waters, then it will identify itself as VE0.
Because the guys with general maritime radio certificates get an automatic pass for the ham radio license.
Yeah.
Well, I should look into that because I had my maritime license at one point.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, you might not have to do the test.
If I can find a copy of that, yeah.
Yeah, no test for you required then, basically, because for me, it's like even though I have other radio licenses, I can't transfer them over. So, anyway.
Government.
Restricted radio, maritime. I had restricted radio, maritime, and land at one point. So.
Oh, it has to be a general maritime, I think. So you
general maritime. Okay.
Yeah.
That won't work then. Okay. Interesting.
Back to the exam generator.
Yeah.
So some good resources. I've put a couple of links here in the show notes. Coax Publications for sure is going to be one for everybody to head over to. Even if you are doing the online course or you're doing an in-person course at a local ham club, majority of them are going to use that book as their teaching book. So that's a good one to have a look at. Their website is a little bit dated as far as how it operates, so it takes a little bit of time to figure out how to work it. But it'll feel a little old school. But anytime I've ordered a book, it has shown up. So don't let that sketch you out too much. They are legitimate. They are going to send you the book, and it's a good resource. I believe they're up to their 9th edition now, so it's a good one to check out. I've put a link here to a YouTube video for antenna fundamentals, and just talks about propagation, because antennas are magic. You will set them up exactly how the textbook says, and they won't work. And then you'll throw one together one day and just chuck it over the fence and kind of put a half-assed pole up, and all of a sudden you'll be talking to China. So, yeah.
Yeah, we got another Facebook comment from Steve that says the repeater book smartphone app is a really great for finding local repeaters as well.
Steve, you're getting ahead.
Yeah, you're stealing my thunder, man.
Yeah. Well, that's it. End of the show, I guess.
All right.
He's right. That app is amazing. I use that app all the time. It'll use your phone's GPS location. So anybody with your tinfoil hat and GPS and phones, just don't listen for a second. It will take the GPS point on your phone, and it will say, here's where you are, and here's all the repeaters in your general area. And it'll give you the frequency to program into your radio. And if there's any tones that you need to use as well to gain access to the repeater, if they're published, it'll tell you what tones to put in.
And it's shocking how many are in your area without even realizing. Like I turned it on, that app in Richmond over in Vancouver, and I was like, whoa, there's like 30. And, and basically they're all bouncing off the valley wall. So they got the antennas up on the ridge. So, I mean, they're going to get incredible range, because it's just so much a height above ground compared to where you are.
I use that app all the time as I'm traveling around for work, because sometimes I'm driving for 6-7 hours. So I'll just use that app, and I'll find the repeaters in the area, and I'll just plug into them. And it's great because you'll get local operators in the area who, don't recognize your call sign. So they'll ask you where you're from. You mention where you're from, and they'll say, okay, well, as you're traveling through, there's a roadblock here, or this is happening there, or hey, just a heads up, we've got some weather warnings in the area. But most of the time I'll get an operator that'll give me a whole bunch of tips. They'll even mention good spots to go eat. So it's kind of handy that way.
The insider scoop, right?
Oh yeah, it's great. And it's to the point now where there's certain areas when I cruise through now, they know that I'm cruising through, and they'll just say hello, and they pick up the call ID and just say, hey, what's going on? Nice. So it's neat that way. I got another one in here, another just antenna basics YouTube video to watch, which would be helpful for the exam as well, because I'll ask you some basic questions about antennas, and the answer is not their magic. That's just reality as they are. But on the exam, don't answer magic. There is some theory behind it.
MacGyver would know how to do it.
Yeah.
Magic.
Yeah, paper clip and a wire. We're done.
So on the subject of antennas, is there a certain style or type of antenna you need, or can you use like an old dish satellite TV antenna, or like the old wire cable TV antennas?
Yeah, so for like the 70 centimeter and 2 meter bands that I use here most often, I've just got like a vertical antenna. Okay. Nothing crazy. Just it actually just sits in the room here with me right now by the window. I've got to get it outside at some point. I've been saying that for a couple of years. It'll get out there eventually.
It was there like when I was first there, over a year ago. I remember that.
Yeah, it hasn't moved. Yeah, it's still there. Yeah, I think I was talking about getting it outside then too.
On that subject, actually, since it's kind of timely, is there a problem with running it up a tree with radio, like RF energy going up a tree, and then being like a heat generation or anything else, or is it just can you actually use a tree trunk as a way to raise your antenna? Yeah,
I would put some standoffs on. It's still going to be putting some voltage through. Yeah. There's always the danger there, but I'd put some standoffs. I wouldn't tie it directly to the tree, because as well, if you're going to put a wire antenna up, you're going to want to have some play, because the tree is going to be swaying. So you're going to want some way to, because if not, if you're just tying the wire directly to the tree, you're going to snap it.
And begging for a lightning strike too, but
that too, yeah. Yeah, so I wouldn't tie it directly to the tree. I'd have some standoffs at the end of it, and have a pulley or some sort of system that allows some sway in it, because if not, you're going to be pulling it. You're going to be snapping it pretty quick. So. Another link I've got here is the actual exam generator. So if you don't want to go all the way through to the bottom of the show notes, you can just put in the Google Canada Ham Operator exam, and it'll come up. And that is the actual question bank, and that is the actual questions that you will be getting. Like we said at the beginning, it's about 500 to 600 questions. So your chances, unless you got a photographic memory of memorizing absolutely all of them, slim to none. But it is a great tool to go to kind of figure out how you're doing and what your knowledge level's at. So definitely check out the exam generator. And
if you don't want to use the industry site, there's a app called Ham Basic that will do the exam generator for you as well.
Yeah, it's just an app that's taken the database because they make the database available to you of all the questions, and then it just rotates the questions through, and it's on your phone, so it can travel with you.
Yep.
Yeah. Maybe you've got a list of questions here, Ian. You want to run through those?
Yeah, Tyler, you got anything you want to add there as well?
Oh no, I had a few links just for that I came across researching, but nothing relevant. So
okay, I'll put those in the notes as well. So yeah, we mentioned the apps there. So I got Repeater Book. We talked about that. Echo Link, I think you mentioned, Eric. Was that one as well?
Yeah. So Echo Link, once you do get through all the testing and you do get your radio ID or your call sign, you can download Echo Link. That is another internet-based transmission thing. So what you can do is it actually turns your phone into a little transmitter. So if a repeater in the area, or any repeater you want really around the world, if it's connected, you can transmit on it using your phone. So if I'm away from home and I want to transmit to a friend of mine here in town, I can use Echo Link. I can log into the local repeater with it, transmit using my phone, and it will broadcast out via the repeater. So it's handy to have, but you do need to have your ham radio ID. You do need to send them proof that you are the holder of that certificate. And when I signed up, you had to be vetted by a current ham on the system in order to be able to gain access to it, because they obviously don't want just Joe Blow signing up to it and starting to broadcast using it because you're not licensed.
And people are jerks.
People are jerks, yeah.
All right. The other one I want to mention too is just it's kind of like a semi-related app, but Scanner Radio. If you don't have a license and you just want to listen in on certain things, you can actually listen to various frequencies. Sometimes they're just EMS. Sometimes they're actually like ham radio. It's a kind of a neat little app to play with. That's pretty much all I had. I think we covered the other ones. I had a question for you. So on antenna placement again. So one thing that most people don't realize is if they get like a handheld UV5R and they go for a drive and they have another ham radio operator in another truck and they want to talk back and forth, it basically doesn't work because your truck acts as a Faraday cage.
Yep, you're in a big metal box.
Yeah, it's not going to work that much.
Nope.
So you want to have an external antenna. Am I correct on that?
You do, yeah, absolutely. So for my truck, I've got a TYT 8900. So that's like a base station. It's permanently installed in the truck. It's not going anywhere unless somebody decides to break into my truck and steal it. So I've got it's a little Comet fender adapter. So it bolts onto my truck and then it just clears the hood. So it sticks up along the edge of the line there from where the hood would pop up. And then I can mount my antenna on there. If you're running a Baofeng, just a little handheld, you can get a Nagea, was it a UT102 if I remember correctly? And it's a little mag mount antenna that you can just put on the roof of your vehicle, and then it'll screw into the Baofeng radio, and then it gets the antenna outside of that metal box, and you can start transmitting again.
Well, that's very key. So people, you don't need to like put a hole in the roof of your truck for one. You'll go through the firewall, no problem, and out into the hood. I drilled no holes to install the antenna in my truck. Everything is all run through the firewall. The only thing I did was screw in the mount bracket. So that was a couple of holes, but well. And I think this comes into play with the bug out episode for a lot of people that are planning on not using their ham radio until the emergency, and they want to run a convoy with they're in one vehicle, their wife's in another, and they want to use the ham radios in case of emergency, and all of a sudden they realize they can't talk to each other. It's the wrong time to find out, right?
It certainly is. Yep.
So yeah, on that note with the vehicle stuff, as far as personal advice or opinion, should you be advertising that you're a ham radio on your vehicle, like with a personalized license plate that shows your call sign, or do you want to like say I'm monitoring 14652 on the back, like we've seen in the local area here, or stuff like that?
Yeah, I have seen all kinds of everything for advertising. I've seen the custom plates. I've seen big white lettering across the back of vehicles with their call ID. Some operators go out and they do contests, so they really like to advertise what their ID is. So everybody knows their ham operator. Everybody knows what their ID is, and that's great. That's fine if that's your thing and you're into the hobby and you're into contesting and you want everybody to know your ID. Have at it. Just keep in mind for our whole gray man scenario. Is it fun to be driving around and you see another ham radio ID drive by you and you can see their plate and you call out on the radio, hey, whatever your ID, I just saw you drive by on the highway. Hello, what's going on? Yeah, it's fun. Sure. And well, times are good. Yeah, no big deal. But it also makes you stand out. It's a unique plate. It's not just the random one that was assigned to you, right? So build it into your gray man system.
So as far as listing watches goes, so there's emergency frequencies for aviation, for nautical, for like even CB has an emergency frequency. So they mentioned this 14652 is kind of an emergency one. Is there just like a standard hailing frequency for ham radio on the VHF or UHF?
Yeah, I've heard the 146.52 before. Some guys will put it in their radio and just monitor it. So if they're sitting down and they're doing contesting or they're running contacts, so they're just chit-chatting, they'll have that on in the background. And if somebody happens to broadcast on it, well, they'll pick up and run with it. A lot of the operators will just flip the radio on in the morning and have it on in their house. And if you know what the local 2 meter or 70 centimeter frequencies are, and you can hop on and say, hey, I need help, there'll be somebody listening for the most part. But I have heard of the 146.52. It's not something that's overly popular here that I know of. But some guys will have it in the radio just in case.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Other than the vehicle now, so the other option, if you don't want to use a handheld, there's a base station idea.
Yep.
So most of these radios are running on either battery packs or 12-volt systems or whatever. So if you want to run into your house, how do you run the power source for that?
Yeah, so that's the one thing that threw me off when I first got into this and I bought my first base station. I'm thinking, great, it's going to show up. I'm going to have that little plug on the end. I'll plug it into the wall and away I go. Right? No, it shows up with 2 cables, no end. And I'm thinking, now what? So you do need to get a 13.8 volt DC power supply. So you can spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars on these, or you can grab one on Amazon for about $30. It all depends on kind of where you want to start. I started out with the Amazon one. It's done me well. I've had it a couple of years now. It's powered a couple of my radios without issue. When I went out and got my Kenwood HF rig, I was not powering that on a $30 Amazon power supply. I bought a proper Kenwood power supply for that one. Do I trust? What's that?
Difference in quality of the filtering of the power. Yeah. Like a cleaner sine wave with a better power supply, right? Than a $30 Amazon special. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and the base stations I run for my 2 meter and 70 centimeter. They run anywhere from $150 to about $350. Does it hurt if I blow up the $300 one? Yeah, it does. But my Kenwood HF one is close to $900. I'm not blowing that up on a $30 power source. So I got the matching Kenwood power supply for it, and it puts out 13.8 as well. But like you said, Alan, it's cleaner and it's more properly built or more well built and more reliable, I would say.
What's the aftermarket like on these things? Are there people that have, is there a swap meet? Is there a Facebook page? Does the used market exist?
It sure does. That's actually where I got my Kenwood from. There was an operator who was just done with operating. He wasn't going to be doing it anymore, and he was looking to sell. So he had this radio, and I happened to see him post it on. It was OnStars, which is an Ontario-based trading website. So I just chatted with him, said, yeah, I'm interested in getting into it. So gave me the details, and the details were good, and it was a good deal. So I said, yeah, done. And he shipped it to me, and all was good. There is also Canadian Amateur Radio Swap on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, you can hop on that. They do ask you to validate your call ID first before they let you in. So they will validate that you are actually an operator. And then that gives them kind of a way to track if something does go wrong with a sale or something like that, but also just validates the fact that you are somebody that is able to be in possession of these things in the first place. And I've seen all kinds of, actually sold a lot of radios on that. So that's a good spot to check out too. And there's all kinds of good deals to be had on there.
If you are in the used market for like a more of a base station, is there any sort of like wear items on these radios, like transistors that wear out after time or anything? Or
yep, the transistors. There's all kinds of different bits and pieces in the radio. It depends on what you're looking at. But yeah, they're like any piece of electronics. They are going to wear over time.
Okay.
So it's it's a gamble at times. A lot of them, though, for example, this Kenwood radio that I have. If something was to break in it, I can still ship it to Kenwood, and Kenwood would repair it. There would probably be some form of fee for it. Some parts are still warranted for life on the device. Some you'd have to pay for, but they do still have shops that will fix them up for you if need be. Or if you have the knowledge, you can pull the parts off and put them on yourself. You can source the parts online. Or if you don't have the knowledge, somebody in your local radio club absolutely will. Or if you've got the basic knowledge but not the comfort doing it, somebody in your local club will certainly have the ability to help you out. And I've found the local club, at least here, or anybody else I've talked to with their local clubs, are always more than welcome to have people contact them, because you need people to have a club, right? So.
Well, I think if you're using the dirty old power supply from Amazon, you probably want to have the spare fuses that are, whenever there's an inline fuse on the power line, you're probably going to want to have spare ones of those for sure.
Yeah. Knock on wood, I haven't had one blow yet, but I'm waiting.
Cool. Last question I had was packet and satellite radio. Can you explain those at all?
Oh, yeah. So I've just started, actually just before the winter, playing around with packet. So that's over HF. Basically, rewind the internet to when it first started with 9600 baud modems. So you can send things over the frequencies. So you can send pictures. That's basically all I've seen right now, but I know you can send other things as well. But it's just like when the internet first started. So it's like first 3 lines, wait. The next line loads, wait. The next line loads, wait. So it's going to take you 15, 20 minutes to get a picture. So, go back to your teenage years and you're just waiting for that picture to load. So
or it's like the 3 days to get the Napster song.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly it. But it is a form of sending things. You can also, I've seen some of the operators are into like television, so they can send certain television frequencies via ham frequencies. So that's kind of neat. I had one operator offer to start sending me some signals to play around with it. I just ran out of time and wasn't able to do it. But that's something else. It's slow, it's cumbersome, but data can be sent. You can also send email. So if there's an email system on it, so you can do that too. So yeah, it's kind of neat.
And so the other one, I just didn't realize this until recently, is that there occasionally, I guess it gets overwhelmed pretty fast, but there actually are satellites passing overhead that you can bounce your VHF signals off and use as a high altitude repeater.
Oh,
but
cool.
I guess it gets really busy really fast when it's passing overhead. So
I guess so.
It's a thing. I mean, it's like if you live on the prairies, you want to like try experimenting with really increasing your range with VHF or UHF versus just plain old HF. Yep. That is a thing, but I've never obviously tried it myself, but I'm very interested to give it a try when it comes.
That would be fun. And you can talk to the International Space Station too if it's overhead. If you time it just right, they do have a ham station on there that you can chat with. I've heard of a couple operators making contact with them, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it. That's all I had.
Yeah.
Oh, we do have radioreference.com for a website that is actually a good way to look up a lot of frequencies to that actually will show up on your UV5R or whatever, whether it be just radio weather stations or local repeaters or whatever. It's a good resource, but also the satellite bounce website there. It's in there as well.
Yeah, and the forum on Radio Reference is full of awesome information too. So if you have a question, there's probably an answer in there for you. But it's a great spot to start out to kind of see what other frequencies are around you. There's a tab that I missed for the longest time using Radio Reference that actually says amateur radio, and it'll give you all the repeater information in there as well for your area. So
cool.
Yeah.
Oh, podcast challenge time.
I think we'll move on to the podcast challenge. Yeah.
All right, so this time we're serious. Get your basic or your advanced, if you've already got your basic amateur radio license by the end of the year. That's a hard challenge for everybody. So it's time for everybody to move up a level, myself included. So I think I should give myself till the end of March, I think it was, and then life happened, and that New Year's resolution fell apart. So end of the year, that's my new thing.
And if anyone's interested, I am toying with the idea of doing a core, like recording a pre-recorded course and then just making it available. So if that's something you're interested in, flip me an email and let me know. And if I know there's enough interest for it, I'll start recording.
Do I have to email you, or can I just tell you now?
No, I know you guys are already interested. I've got all the materials and everything to run a course. I've just been playing with that idea for a little while now. So if there's some interest, flip an email onto feedback@prepperpodcast.ca and let me know. And if I know there's enough people out there, maybe I'll put one together.
And yeah, if you have any tactical use questions, I'm sure Eric will gladly handle those as well for ham radio.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think just everybody needs to kind of get that up, because I'm also kind of worried that as the generations change out, and we have the internet generation coming into play, and less people get their ham radio license, I'm worried a lot of these frequency bands might go away because of lack of use. Yeah. So I'd like to see more people get their license just to at least maintain what we have, because we're always losing our freedoms and little tidbits out there. So it'd be nice to maintain this one at least.
Oh, and here's a good one from Steve in the live chat here, just saying that a local gal here has a podcast with all the questions read out. So if you're an audio type learner, you can throw that on, and that'd be good.
Well, that's fantastic, Steve.
Yeah,
actually, you know what that podcast is.
Yeah, just if you can quickly put the podcast name up on the show note or on the comments, that'd be great. We'll stay online at least long enough for that to happen. So, anyways, I guess move up to upcoming events.
Yeah.
The only one on our radar so far, and it's hopefully it's still going to happen, is TACCOM 2020. That's going to happen September 11th to 13th, all being well. The Canadian Pro Gun Podcasters Network will be in attendance. Your favorite podcasters and us will be on hand throughout the show, so make sure you stop by the booth, meet everybody that you love to hear, and pick up some swag. Find details in the show notes. And there's a ticket link there as well. If you wouldn't mind buying your tickets through that, helps us a little bit.
And we've got a link on the website too at prepperpodcast.ca. It's over on the right-hand side. So if you don't want to dig through the show notes, you can just click that link and it'll take you over and you can buy your tickets.
The more tickets we buy now, the more likely the show is to happen.
Yep. And the more likely it is we're going to have internet while there.
Even better.
All right, we'll move into some shout-outs.
My only shout out this week is for all the viewers in the live chat, keeping us on our toes while we're live. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Keep it up. Keep the comments coming. We absolutely love it. I learned, I think, about 3 episodes ago that I can actually see those live comments instead of waiting for one of the hosts to put it up. So I appreciate that. Keep it up, and if you've got anything to add, please do. We absolutely love it. We're all fairly knowledgeable, but we by no means have all the information. So thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. For myself, it's a quick shout out, a little bit dated from the beginning of April, but shout out to Tom. He's our first Patreon. So your $1 a month is going to go to helping to pay the bills here and keep the lights on. So appreciate it.
Ian seems to have dropped off, but he wanted to give a shout out to Better Ian and Pete for help with the shearing, Dave. So if you guys are listening, Ian says thanks, and he just is having some computer troubles.
Oh, he's back.
I'm back. Hey. What's going on? Yeah, you're crying on me.
I just need your shout outs for you, Ian.
Yeah, no worries. Actually, quick question. I got to get a hold of Fred this week from TACCOM to see if it's still a go for sure, and I want to get him on here for an episode probably in the next month or so that might be a thing too. I see we got the link to the podcast, so that's good.
Yep,
from Steve, so thank you very much for that. And
that's for the advanced apparently, so
okay,
so that's good. And there'll be a link for the basic there as well, so that's good to know that there's one for the advanced, because I want to start studying for that.
Nice.
Cool.
Perfect. So I'll put that in the show notes too for anybody that wants it.
Cool. For my shout-outs, I just wanted to mention a shout-out to Better Ian and Pete for the help during the shearing day. That was awesome. As usual, they showed up without any hesitation and helped me out when I needed it. So
awesome. All right. So that's, any shout-outs for you, Tyler?
Nope, nothing this week.
All right. Well, let's move into email and iTunes reviews then. So we are up to 54 5 stars. We got 5 4 stars, 2 3 stars, 1 2 star, and that 1 star keeping us honest as per usual. And the inbox has been empty besides the job applications, which are oddly sent in Excel format. I don't know why. Sorry, I haven't opened them yet. I don't want your crypto. So
don't question it. Just click on the link, Eric.
No. As much as I like my computer being crypto locked, it's just not going to happen.
That's right. I bought one thing off Wish.com mistakenly for this week, and of course my credit card got compromised. So
No.
I was dumb enough to do that once. So I was like, oh, really?
Oh, you got to test it once, right?
Yeah.
And we got the link here from Steve for the basic as well. So I'll put that up here in the video, but I'll also throw it in the show notes, and you'll have it.
Cool.
So appreciate that, Steve. Thanks. All right. So, does anybody else have email or anything they wanted to go over?
That's all I had.
I have
All right.
received no emails
Oh.
and no messages on my Instagram. I'm feeling rather lonely.
We'll have to fix that. You'll have to get your ham license first, and you can answer questions. All right. So with that, I'll bring episode number 69, and I'm impressed that there have been no jokes about that all episode of the Canadian Prepper Podcast to an end. You can find the podcast. You can find the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, or of course your favorite podcast app. Please help us out. Take a second and submit a review. It does help other people find us.
We record these shows live on Facebook and YouTube. If you want an early peek at the shows, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Canadian Prepper Podcast. Click the notifications tab. That gives you an alert when we are going live. If you want to get me directly, and please do. I love talking with people. You can find me directly on Instagram at PPSWO or Alan with 1L at prepperpodcast.ca.
And if you got any questions or advice for me, you can email me at tyler@prepperpodcast.ca.
All right, you can reach Ian directly by emailing me at theislandretreat@gmail.com. And you can also find me on Canadian Patriot Podcast on iTunes and YouTube. We record Monday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. There you can find me discussing why excess government has made me want to self-isolate even more.
Awesome. And you can check out Rapid Survival at rapidsurvival.com. You get me there on the live chat while buying some prepper gear. You can also email me at feedback@prepperpodcast.ca. And so thanks for joining us this evening. And until next time, be prepared, stay safe,
And keep learning.